Hello again. I am author Nathaniel Sewell, my pen name, which I like using these days. I think it's kind of fun. This time I'm going to talk about my novel Fifth and Hope. And it's kind of a very personal novel. In truth, it's inspired from my grandparents who actually met at the corner of Fifth and Hope Streets in downtown Los Angeles in 1926. And it's funny, I've always heard Fifth and Hope, and I've had friends go, that'd be a great book title for you. And I'm thinking, that's fine. Just, do you mind, giving me a story maybe to write about? That sort of thing. So, funny thing how the world works. To me, it's how God inspires me. That little whisper, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, what about that? Did you ever think that? And all of a sudden I'm off and running. The theme of Fifth and Hope is really about the main character, Bobby, and his anger. He's an angry man. He's not a nice guy. I've had people read the book and go, oh, it was really, I enjoyed the story, except for Bobby was really mean. And I'm like, yes, I want him to be mean. In a sense, he's bitter. So, the theme of it is trying to learn to overcome things that bother you personally, and maybe things that bother our society. I kind of looked at it in a broad and specific way. Never thought I'd write like that, but I did. This was published in 2017, if I remember correctly. Saying that if you're a creative person, you want to write, this is how I do it. I encourage you to write. There's one thing I would tell you in particular is don't filter. Whatever you do, just let it go. Learn how to be professional. Learn how to do everything professionally. Learn how to engage with editors, book cover, all this kind of stuff. Which is part of the reason I'm talking to you right now, which is I want to talk about the themes that I kind of laid out there earlier. Where the book title comes from is literally Fifth and Hope, where my grandparents met. And I think I'll show you some photos of them. I literally have a photograph of them standing next to the Model A Ford that they drove across the original Route 66 in 1930. I thought that was interesting. It was a little daunting, to be very blunt. I had it in my head, I kind of went, okay. So the character finds his grandfather's diaries, something kind of like the diary I'm about to show you. That's literally my grandfather, and that's when he was 1926, he would have been 21 years old. His entire world in front of him. And I thought, well, okay, so if you found a diary, what's in the diary? Do you want to read it? And then the other thought was, you really don't know your grandparents. You always look at them, if you're lucky enough to have, know your grandparents, you only see them in the context of being a lot older. I'm 59 years old, so I would only remember my grandfather when he was in his 60s, not when he was this age, when he was in his 20s, or my grandmother. My grandfather went out to Bible Institute Los Angeles and studied out there and graduated. He met my grandmother out there. She was a Kansas girl. And like a lot of iconic, sad American stories from the Dust Bowl era, they had lost the farm in Kansas. The father died, he's passed. And so they go to California to restart their lives. Classic, American kind of type story. But it was interesting for me to kind of think, well, okay, that's great, but a couple things. How do you piece together that route? And why would the Bobby character follow that route, all these years later? And, some of the underlying themes of the book, again, are, one is child death, bitterness, being angry at God for some reason, looking at society and things that you think are just tough to even consider. One example would be, I grew up in Lexington, Kentucky, and there's a place in downtown Lexington called Cheapside. Now, when I was in college, we used to go to Cheapside, and I thought it was a bar. We'd go to Jefferson Davis Inn. Mary Todd Lincoln, her house is literally within walking distance of this place. Abraham Lincoln roamed around Lexington. So did Jefferson Davis of Transylvania. So it's a very Civil War rich kind of area, for good or bad. The bad was that I realized as an adult that Cheapside was actually a slave market. I'm going to show you some city signs that are still up, I do believe, that kind of recount that. And I was always thinking about writing about it, but I couldn't quite figure out how or what angle to go at. And so if you look at the book cover of Fifth and Hope, if you look real close, you see a road, you see Route 66, and you see a little church out in the distance. And that church sort of mimics my grandfather's church that I'll show you here. And how that intermixed to create the story. That's really kind of how the book cover got created. You know, I wanted to kind of pay homage to some of my friends' ancestors. I'll show you a picture of my basketball team. Let's see if you can pick me out. I'll blot out their faces, but you might find it funny, but I don't find it funny at all. I think it's very, very sad. And I remember when I realized what was going on there, you know, that I grew up around and didn't know, was completely ignorant of. I felt sick to my stomach of what happened on that ground. And so, just as would have it, I was able to put a route together. Anything that was built from 1930 or older, from 1925 or 1900, whatever, made the cut. So my grandparents theoretically could have driven right by it and seen it. And so that's the route that they're going to take. But it's a route with a lot of areas on it that, you know, we look at Route 66 in many ways and it's sort of pop culture. But in reality, it really tells a lot of the story of my country, the United States. And what we did and what we experienced, and some of it's good and some of it's not so good. And I think the key is to be honest, to be very blunt and honest and show it. And I think that's what makes good literature to me, from a creative standpoint, is putting together stories that I think are meaningful and are, quite frankly, kind of timeless. But you know, with this series, I'm just trying to talk about theme, book title, book cover, why I came up with it, how I came up with it. I think I just explained. And you know, I always say this: is if you're a creative person, do it. Allow your inner self, if you have a story to tell, learn the craft, do all the work, but do it, and I think you'll be proud. And in closing, you know, if you ever want to copy one of my books, and by the way, I spelled Nathaniel with an E, not an A, as my marketing team did there, which I now think is kind of a running joke. But you know, send me a note through my website, and I've given away hundreds, if not thousands, of books, just to see if people like it, and you know, maybe word of mouth will get out there. And you never know where it goes from there, but it's not intended to be anything other than fun, and it's a passion that I follow, and I've been doing it for a long time now. So with that, thanks for watching and listening, and we'll talk again soon.